How's it going, laser bruisers? I'm Bobby Sixkilla. Welcome back to Route Double. We're currently delving, as Natsuhiko, into Watase's memories and what brought him to be the way that he is, I guess, as we're also helping him remember those memories that we destroyed at the beginning, basically. So we're learning about him and his relationship with Wataru, his sister, basically, at the moment. Let's see how things progress, shall we? Something unexpected happened. Watase had woken up from a bizarre dream he'd had that night. What was that all about? In the dream, he'd been in a town in some foreign country. He'd been desperately running for his life from flames that were engulfing the town. But no matter how hard he ran, the flames just kept on chasing him. Watase was soon surrounded by flames and smoke that filled the air around him. What a horrible dream. But why was I in a foreign country? Watase tried to go back to sleep as he vaguely wondered that. But at that moment, his nose caught the stench of what smelled like something burning. Am I dreaming again? No. Watase suddenly sat right up. He wasn't dreaming. That stench of smoke was clearly all too real. What's more, the sound of the fire alarm was echoing around him like crazy. A fire has broken out in the hospital. All patients and visitors, please evacuate as soon as possible. This is not a drill. Everyone in the facility, please evacuate as soon as possible. A robotic announcement can explain the situation in a detached voice. Watase felt himself shaking like crazy at those words. Crap! With the cast around his leg, Watase couldn't move at all. So that meant when the fire reached his room, I'm gonna die. Oh shit, I gotta get out of here. Watase dragged his left leg and crept out of his bed. His room was on the 7th floor. He couldn't escape through the windows. But when he opened the door to his room, the hallway was already consumed in flames. Watase frantically shut the door. He had no chance of weaving his way through the flames with the condition his leg was in. If a nurse or someone doesn't get here before the fire does, then I'm... help! Is anyone there? Help me! Someone help me! But no one came by no matter how much he yelled. The nurse call button wasn't responding either. Perhaps the doctors and nurses had abandoned Watase and the other patients and had already evacuated. It wasn't long before smoke began seeping in from around the edges of the shut door. Watase coughed violently. He frantically opened the window, but smoke was filling the room faster than it could escape it. It only grew thicker as time continued to pass. Just then Watase thought he heard something burst open. The fire had probably already reached the room. I'm in deep shit here. If things stay the same, then in just a few minutes I'll be... dead. The fear of death gradually weighing down on Watase's mind. Someone... He tried calling for help, but he couldn't speak anymore. With no idea of what to do, Watase was about to break the window and jump out when... Watase! He heard her voice. He turned around in shock to see Wataru open the door and run into the room. What? How? I came to save you when I saw the smoke rising from the hospital. The firefighters are taking too long to get here. You'll die if you keep waiting in here for help. So let's get out of here. Right. There wasn't any time to think. Watase grabbed onto Wataru's shoulder and left his room. The hallway was already wrapped up by flames. The twins weaved their way through them and ran away, but the staircase was completely blocked by flames. Watase and Wataru were stuck on the 4th floor. Wataru broke into a violent coughing fit. She'd probably exhausted her stamina while dragging Watase through the fire. If this keeps up, then Wataru will die too, all because of me. Once he realized that, Watase forced himself to speak. Wataru, leave me and save yourself. What are you saying? There's no way in hell I could do that. Didn't I tell you if I were in grave danger, I'd save you even if it cost me my life? But we'll both die at this rate. You might still have a chance to get out of here by yourself. A light sparked in Wataru's eyes when she heard Watase mutter that. Watase, you can't give up. You have to keep fighting on and on until the bitter end. If you want to die, you can do that later. Wataru shouted and tightened her grip around Watase's arm, then broke off into a mad dash. They soon discovered an emergency staircase that was undamaged by the fire. They ran down it and soon found the exit to the hospital coming into view. Look, Watase, it's the exit. Right. It was only a hair's breadth away. They hadn't noticed earlier, but now they could hear the fire truck sirens closing in too. We're saved. He then tried to move toward the exit, with Wataru as he thought that, only to hear the unpleasant sound of something creaking above them. He looked up in surprise to see the cracks forming in the ceiling. The cracks spread wider in an instant, causing the concrete ceiling to bend swiftly. It's crumbling down. As soon as Watase thought that... Watase? Wataru pushed him toward the exit. Watase fell on the ground outside the hospital. What he saw before him was a perfect starry sky. And what he heard was... the roar of something collapsing. Huh? Watase looked into the hospital from the exit. Where Wataru had been standing moments ago was now a burning pile of debris. Wataru? No response. Wataru? No response. Wataru? Watase screamed and limped over to the mountain of debris. Wataru, you're still in there, right? Answer me. Wataru? Wataru? Before long, a response appeared. In the form of a stream of blood flowing out from under the debris. It can't be. Stop it. Why did this... Watase began randomly moving debris as he rambled incoherently in a hollow voice. Wataru, Wataru, Wataru. The debris was lit with flames, hot enough to burn anyone who touched it. But Watase ignored the pain and kept picking up debris and tossing it aside. He soon heard a voice from behind. We've located a survivor. It's probably a firefighter. Watase ignored them and kept working on his attempts to rescue Wataru. Hey, what are you doing? The firefighter ran over to Watase after noticing something was clearly wrong with the boy. It's dangerous, get back, you'll catch fire. The firefighter grabbed Watase by the shoulder. Watase shook off his hand and shouted, out of my way, Wataru's under this debris. What? Somebody's under this? No, then we'll take care of the rescue. Ah, shut up, I can't believe it to you guys. This is all your fault because you didn't get here faster. Watase's deranged screams echoed through the night sky. Watase was restrained shortly afterwards. The firefighters managed to pull Wataru out from under the rubble. But by that point she had long since breathed her last. The great Rokumei city arson. That was what the events of the night would come to be called. September 16th, 2014. Fires broke out all at the same time at 15 different spots in Rokumei City, starting with the Rokumei City Hospital. Various buildings such as civilian residences, public facilities, multi-tenant buildings, even the apartment building where Watase's family lived were indiscriminately set fire to and were burned down in that one single night. 118 casualties, 236 injured. Among the casualties were not only Wataru, but Watase's parents as well. The culprit was soon caught. It appeared the crime was committed by an extremist group. It was said that the arson had been committed as a demonstration against the rapidly growing communicator population. But Watase didn't care about any of that. He just couldn't come to grips with the fact that he'd lost everything in a single night. 2 months had passed. Watase stood still in front of the ruins of the burnt-down hospital. This is where Wataru... Though he thought that, he no longer had any tears to shed. Though the cast around his leg had already been removed, his emotional scars hadn't healed. We didn't even get to say anything to each other when she left. Why did she give up her life for someone like me? It pained him that he alone had lived while the rest of his family had died. Simply living felt like agony to him. Wataru lived for her dreams and the things she wanted to do. So why is it that someone with no hopes for the future like me survived instead of her? He'd been asking himself that question endlessly for the last 2 months. He thought he might be able to find an answer if he came to this place, but naturally he didn't. Tell me, Wataru, what am I supposed to do now? The moment that thought crossed his mind, his cell phone suddenly rang. Watase slowly picked up the phone. A familiar voice came across the other line. A pleasure calling you. This is Fujimoto of the Rokumei City Public Welfare Division. Hello. After the Great Arson, the victims of the fire had been given all sorts of accommodations by the city's Public Welfare Division. They had covered Watase's transfer to another hospital and other such procedures while he was still recovering from his broken leg. The one on the phone was his sponsor in the Public Welfare Division. Due to the effects of this incident, we at Rokumei City have decided to aid the bereaved families of the victims as much as possible. In accordance with the crime victim support laws, minors will be supplied with residences and welfare. Thank you very much. Watase replied indifferently to the worker's pensive voice. After a brief silence, the worker continued in a quiet voice. We plan to settle things so you have nothing to worry about in your life and future. My future? For example, you'll be able to return to high school and we shall assist you if you wish to go on to college. We shall also assist you in getting a job of your choice, should you desire to be self-reliant. Do you have any plans for the future? As soon as Watase heard that, Wataru's words replayed in his mind. Saving someone's life means protecting their future. I just find that to be so incredibly noble. The moment he remembered those words, Watase's mouth instinctively began moving. I'll be a rescue worker. That was the only way he could even hope to repay Wataru for saving his life. I'll fulfill Wataru's dream. That was the moment when he decided on his path in life. With Wataru's death as a trigger, Watase decided to become a rescue worker. A long time had passed since that day. Much like before, Natsuhiko could instinctively tell how much time had passed, as if they were his own memories. So it's been 7 years since then. The thing he saw was a memory of 9 years ago when Watase was 23 years old. Watase was training his body that morning, just like he did every other day. The sound of him counting his push-ups echoed through the dim room. 195, 196, 197. His breath was calm and orderly, with not a single bit of exhaustion to be found. 200. Watase stopped once he'd counted to 200. Whew! Watase stood alone in his room, not a bead of sweat on his face. He was living in a small apartment the city had provided him with after he'd lost his old family home. He'd been living there for almost 7 years. The same apartment he'd lived in through the time he'd finished up with high school and then moved on to firefighting school. In those 7 years, the Rokumei city had transformed into a massive research city that revolved around BC research and nuclear power, to a point where it became a government-designated top-secret city. Watase had no time to feel uncomfortable about the rapid changes happening in the city, much less feel any loneliness. He lived only to fulfill his sister's dreams. He'd remodeled his body and tempered his soul to do so, and passed the notoriously difficult rescue worker exam with top marks. A rescue squad was finally established at Rokumei City Fire Department at almost the exact same time, and so he enlisted in it. At that moment, the 2 PM alarm rang on his watch. It was almost time for him to go to work. According to Watase's rotation schedule, he started work at 4 PM, but Watase had a personal rule about always showing up to work early. Time to go. The one who spoke was no longer the lazy boy who had no purpose in life. The rescue worker with a body and will of iron left his apartment and headed straight for work. He arrived at the fire station. The building he'd once seen with his sister was now Watase's workplace. He figured he'd get used to it long ago, but he still found himself remembering that day from time to time. There's no female rescue workers out there now, huh? If possible, I'd like to be one. Watase's heart throbbed painfully at the memory of her voice. Maybe Wataru was the one who's really working here, not me. He couldn't exactly keep himself from feeling any hatred for the culprit, but it was much healthier for him to live for the dead than live by hating others. Just as Watase stood thinking to himself, an ear-piercing siren suddenly interrupted his thoughts. A dispatch. He instantly set his thoughts aside as he focused his mind and honed his senses. His co-workers and the guys on the night shift rapidly dispersed out of the station. The commander now noticed Watase and called out to him from afar. Kasasagi, good timing. We're heading out right now. What's the dispatch for? There was a gas explosion at the apartment over there. Watase jumped onto the fire truck as soon as he heard that. He listened to the radio report inside the truck as he changed into his uniform. A large-scale gas explosion accident has occurred at the Rokumei Municipal Apartment Complex at 24 Hagashimachi. There are residents still inside, though the exact number is uncertain. Furthermore, there is a possibility that the building will cave in or collapse entirely. Firefighting squads and the elite rescue squad are to hurry to the scene and conduct firefighting and rescue efforts. The truck arrived at the scene just as the radio transmission ended. Damn, this is bad. Thick clouds of black smoke rose from the now burning apartment complex. The commander swiftly gave out the orders to the squad members. The explosion occurred from floors 1 to 4 on the building's east side. As such, there is a high risk of that side collapsing. That is where we'll be conducting our rescue efforts. Team A will split into 2 groups. Kasasagi and Dojima will take the 6th floor, while Hiyama and Matsuzawa will take the 5th floor. Likewise, Team B will also split into 2 groups. Asukai and Okamura will take floors 4 and 3, while Hashino and Ida will take floors 2 and 1. Remember, we're trying to save lives here. Make sure you don't leave a single person behind. Ask your team captains for specific instructions. Alright then, get to work, men. So yes, sir. The rescue workers then proceeded to run into the apartment complex. Watase and his partner Dojima went around checking all the rooms on the 6th floor. There were many doors they couldn't open, likely due to the explosion. But they just broke down those doors, saved all the people inside, and continued their rescue efforts in a show of supreme skill. Just when they finished checking all the rooms, the walkway began to slant. It's collapsing. Crap, Kasasagi, let's pull out! Dojima shouted that to him from behind. They'd already completely evacuated the floor they'd been assigned to, so they were positive they hadn't left anyone behind. But as Watase and Dojima started fleeing, a voice called out. Help us! Watase stopped dead in his tracks. Kasasagi, what's wrong? I thought I just heard a voice. He didn't know where it was coming from, but he heard it again. We're in apartment 303. Hurry, the fire was feeble and only came out in fragments, but it was definitely the voice of someone seeking help. That'd be the 3rd floor. Did they not search all the rooms down there? Dojima, did you hear that? There's still someone in apartment 303. Yeah, let's go save them. Watase and Dojima proceeded to rush down the stairs. They encountered a woman who lived there on their way and forced her to evacuate, then headed for apartment 303. They kicked down the warped door and found themselves in a room whose ceiling had collapsed. Flames flickered in that dim space. Where's the survivor? Watase looked all around the room and spotted a girl lying trapped under burning debris. Watase's heart leapt as the sight of the girl momentarily overlapped with Wataru's death in his mind. I've located a survivor. Watase ran over to the girl and pulled her out of the rubble. Are you okay? The girl moaned in pain. She was apparently barely conscious from the lack of oxygen, but she was indeed still alive. Dojima's voice suddenly called out to him. There's another one over here. The survivors were 2 girls. Watase and Dojima each took one of the girls and ran out of the room. Watase walked through the creaking hallway as he carried the girl he'd found. It's Jun! That's fucking Jun! Dojima was a short distance behind him, carrying the other girl. The girl Watase was holding soon broke out into a pained coughing fit. Are you okay? I'm gonna get you to a safe place soon, so just hold on tight. But it hurts. My back, my head, my eyes, they all hurt so much. Am I gonna die? Watase answered her tearful question in a clear voice. No, don't you worry, I'll never let you die. Never. Huh? We're rescue workers, we came to save you guys. We won't let you die now that we're here. Watase said that as if to convince himself of that. Yeah, isn't that right, Wataru? A rescue worker's job is to protect others' futures. So there's no way in hell I can let this little girl die. Watase walked down the hallway as he thought that, all while carrying that small life on his back. Watase and Dojima soon safely escaped the apartment and successfully rescued the girls. They were both badly hurt, but it appeared their lives were most likely not in any danger. The girls were put into an ambulance and taken away to the hospital. Watase watched the ambulance drive off. Hey, were you watching me? I protected those girls' futures. Do you think I've matured a little since those days? Watase felt like he could hear a nostalgic voice when he thought that. You've done so well, Watase. You've made your big sis proud of you. It was probably just a figment of his imagination, but Watase looked up to the heavens and gave that voice a smile. And then, another long period of time passed from when Watase had saved those girls. This one's 8 years after that dispatch, huh? Watase's life as a rescue worker continued after that day. He'd been on more dispatches than he could count and saved many lives. It was by no means an easy life, but it was the one he'd eventually got used to. Now in his early 30s, he was a man of extremely sound mind that had no disturbances in his life. It was a warm day. Watase finished his shift and took a walk around the city at dusk with his mind at total peace. There had been a lot of peaceful days like this recently with no dispatches. Why do I feel a bit unsatisfied? I mean, I never would have dreamed that there'd ever be days like this back then. His job and co-workers had supported him all this way. Among those co-workers, there were 2 of them that had similar backgrounds to Watase. They were Seiji Dojima and Kazuki Hiyama. Much like him, they had also lost family and loved ones in the Great Arson and had been brought up in the city. They'd all become rescue workers for similar motives and were all close in age, so the 3 of them got along very well. They had been blessed with co-workers whom he could pour his heart out to, a job that he thought was worth doing, and on top of that, a subordinate who loved him dearly. He'd often been thinking recently that his life wasn't so bad after all. Just as he returned to his apartment and finished changing, his PDA rang. The display read, "Caller unknown." Watase hesitated for a moment, then picked up the phone. "Mr. Watase Kasasagi, I presume." He heard a man's voice on the other end. His voice sounded somewhat mechanical, like it was being filtered through a voice changer. Who is this? I'm not the one to give away my name. The truth is, there's something I'd like to tell you. Huh? Me? The man started talking dispassionately, just as Watase was ready to fully write this off as a prank. "I apologize, but we've looked into you." Huh? Watase Kasasagi, age 31, lost your family in the great Rokumei City arson 15 years ago. After that, you were taken underneath the protection of Rokumei City and moved into municipal housing. You enrolled in the firefighting school after graduating high school. After graduating that, you were assigned to the Rokumei City Fire Department. You quickly stuck out among your peers and passed the rescue worker exam 2 years later. You then enlisted in Sirius. I know it must have been tough for you to lose your family, but you avoided lashing out and grew up to be an honest man. Shivers ran down Watase's spine, for he didn't know what reason his caller would run a background check on him. What the hell are you, some kind of stalker? Stalking other men, you sure have some sick hobbies. It's not a hobby, there's a reason I looked into it. It's because you're an unfortunate victim of the great arson. Don't talk about that, I don't want to hear that kind of stuff from other people. You are indeed probably tired of hearing people offer their sympathies for the loss of your family. I can understand why you don't want to talk about this. But what if I told you that your family didn't die just because of some arson? What? Watase gasped. Hold on, what the hell's that supposed to mean? Let me make one thing clear in advance. If you learn the truth, your life will probably change forever. If you treasure your current life, then hang up now. Then everything will stay the way it is. You can go back to your peaceful life. But if you still wish to know the truth, then come to the ruins of the old Rokumei City Hospital, alone. And with those last words, the caller hung up. Hey! There was no response from his PDA, no matter how much he yelled at it. Watase stood in a daze for a while in his apartment. The ruins of the old Rokumei City Hospital. What truth is he talking about? Damn it. His desire to know the truth and his desire to keep on living in contentment were at odds in his mind. But Watase eventually made his decision, dashing out of his apartment. It had been 15 years since he last visited this place. The place where Wataru had lost her life had apparently been left the way it was for all these years. Probably because it was such a big hospital that demolishing it would cost a sum that no man was willing to pay. There was no sign of anyone in the ruined hospital. Hey, is anyone there? Watase's shouts simply echoed meaninglessly through the halls. So it really was a prank. Overcome with both irritation and relief, Watase was about to leave the ruins, when he spotted something shining on the ground by the entrance. The hell's this? It was a PDA. He took a close look at it to find the words "Call in Progress" were displayed on the screen. Watase picked up the PDA, a sense of unease weighing on his mind. When he did, he heard the voice of the man who'd called him earlier, coming from the speaker. Hey there, looks like you really did come. So it really was you. Rather roundabout way of pranking people, don't you think? Several problems could possibly arise if you were to see my face. Please forgive me for resorting to this method. And again, I don't get a word you're saying. Well, whatever. Anyway, keep your damn promise and tell me the truth you were mentioning or whatever. The man started talking in a meek voice. As you know, fires broke out simultaneously in 15 different places in the city on September 16th, 2014. That's the event we know to be called the Great Rokumei City Arson, but there are many unsolved mysteries behind that incident. Wouldn't you agree? Huh? Well, yeah, that's true. Watase knew about that too. Most of the information concerning the trials related to the incident had not been made public. The country and Rokumei City had been hounded by the media, but they hadn't got much information out of them apart from the incident was caused by an extremist group. They claim the incident to be a kind of terrorist attack committed by a group aimed to reject communicators. They say that they kept the details away from the public to prevent copycat criminals and public unrest from rising up. While it all adds up, it's a rather simple story to swallow. What are you implying? The truth is actually the other way around. The extremist group that was arrested were nothing more than scapegoats. The incident was actually caused by a lone communicator. Watase doubted what he'd heard. A lone communicator did that? That'd be ridiculous. How the hell could a single communicator set fire to 15 separate places in the city all at once? It's possible. For the cause of it all was a communicator who possessed an extraordinary power. What? She eventually came to be known as Communicator A. The man began explaining the details of this communicator in a subdued voice. A's real name was Alice N. Flame. She moved to Rokumei City from France 15 years ago. I don't know how you'd pronounce that name then. At the time, the Rokumei City government was inviting communicators from all over the world to move to the city. They needed human resources for various experiments and study in order to advance their research in the suddenly valuable field of BC. Watase remembered that the Rokumei City had indeed been doing all that years ago. They killed the one who came from France, A. A was the first rank S aptitude communicator discovered in the world. That's why she caught Rokumei City's eye. A was shown in the PRC and became a test subject for the study and development of BC abilities. Back then, all they knew about BC was that it allowed for abilities to send your voice to a faraway person and read others' minds. But the PRC discovered the underlying mechanisms of telepathy and empathy through their study of A. And through those experiments, A's own BC abilities developed and grew stronger. She became able to use telepathy and empathy freely. Their effective ranges grew wider, and her power just kept growing on and on with no end in sight. But if that was all there were to it, there wouldn't have been any problems. The problem was that A was both the strongest communicator there was and the worst criminal there was. When the man said that, a floral scent drifted through the air from somewhere. The screen on the PDA had changed. What's this? That's Salu. It appeared to be a magazine, and she's from France. It appeared to be a magazine article written in a foreign language. There were two pictures here, one of a burning building and the other of a beautiful woman. Watase felt like he'd seen her somewhere before. I remember that too. This is a French gossip magazine article about the incident that occurred in A's hometown in February 2014. A, with her tremendous power, was ostracized by the people around her. So one day, she set fire to her town to slaughter those who had ostracized her. Huh? I've heard that story somewhere before. Watase thought about it and then remembered Watadu had told him about it back when she was still alive. Well, the thing is, there have been these BC related incidents happening from time to time in other countries. And when they were talking, Watase had seen a blonde woman in the PRC. No way, was that woman Communicator A? His memory was fuzzy because it had happened so long ago, but he had a feeling he was right. The time frame matched up and everything. The man continued as Watase frowned. In other words, A was simply malice incarnate, a woman who, on a whim, tried to massacre every person in the city. She was pursued by the French authorities, but before they could catch her, she fled to Japan and was sheltered by the PRC. Luckily for her, the PRC developed her BC abilities without ever realizing the true danger they possessed. What was so dangerous about them? You don't know? BC telepathy, that is, isn't just the ability to send your voice to a faraway person. You can also send your feelings to others with it. In other words, powerful BC could very well change other people's thoughts. So what do you think would happen if someone filled with as much malice as A were to indiscriminately let her thoughts loose on everyone around her? Those thoughts would bring out the malice that lurks on the hearts of every man. Her malice would spread to everyone around her, like a virulent disease. Now you understand just how dangerous it is, don't you? That's why everyone lost their mind inside the facility. Why Jun started going crazy with her engine cutter and you know, they all went crazy. But is it actually Yuri that's doing that? Is it Salu? Is it this A? Watase was rendered speechless. He just silently continued to listen to the man. The researchers at the PRC raised an ordinary criminal into a bona fide monster. The researchers realized how dangerous A was far too late and set up surveillance to keep her from wandering out into the city. And on September 16th, 2014, A escaped from the facility. Escaped? Did you mean she... Yes, she spread her malice-laced thoughts all throughout the city that night. Those thoughts influenced the minds of the people of Rokumei City in some way. This caused the already high levels of malice held by would-be criminals to spike through the roof, and led them to setting the city on fire. This is the truth behind the great Rokumei City arson. The man declared all that in a clear voice, but why would that make Watase hate all communicators? Sure, A, it would make sense that he would hate A for it, but come on. It can't be. Watase noticed that his hands had started shaking. He's saying a single woman became the trigger behind the incident. The story was sudden and difficult to believe, but the man spoke in an unwavering, serious voice, leaving no room for doubt. Watase remained silent as the man continued. This was a scandal for the PRC, and consequently, a scandal for the Rokumei City government, the ones managing the PRC. but they won't admit to that. Rokumei City hid the truth behind the incident along with the existence of A. A was taken back to the PRC in absolute secrecy and confined in a basement of sorts again. In the meantime, Labo was constructed on the outskirts of the city. Once it was completed, A was transferred from the PRC to Labo. But why Labo? That's a nuclear research facility, isn't it? Why would they send a communicator there? No, Labo is no nuclear research facility. It's actually a BC research facility. Impossible, I've never heard anything about that. Of course not. It's this city's biggest secret. But don't you think it's strange? There are many hurdles you have to overcome to create a new nuclear reactor. You have to clear strict construction standards and legal problems, then make the necessary arrangements with the city council. Yet all of those conditions were cleared quickly and Labo was built. Why was Labo able to easily overcome those hurdles and get built in the first place? The answer is simple. Because Labo doesn't actually have a nuclear reactor. Because it's a BC research facility, not a nuclear research facility. The common sense Watase had thought to be true up until this point was gradually being rewritten. The man waited a moment for Watase to respond, then continued. But the one problem that stood in their way was the sentiments of the townspeople. Their apathy toward nuclear power was overwhelming, as you'd expect. But the city explained to the civilians that the implementation of truly safe nuclear power is essential to Japan now that our natural resources are drying up, which led to the townspeople finally accepting their decision. Watase remembered the turmoil of that time. Watase had been 18 years old at the time, but he had just enrolled in firefighting school. He hadn't had much of a reaction to all the fuss other than, well, I guess the city's gonna do what it's gonna do. But that series of events was all a cover. Everyone was opposed to nuclear power, but no one suspected that Labo was actually a BC research facility, and they used the dangers of confidentiality of nuclear power research as a pretext to successfully keep the townspeople far away from Labo. So you mean the guys behind Rokumei City even used the townspeople's feelings of opposition to their advantage? That's something no person should be allowed to do. That is of trivial importance to the people of Labo. Their only moral code is to take the best possible actions for their research. No way! At any rate, Labo was then completed. And it's no ordinary research facility either. It's also a facility for keeping dangerous communicators like A locked up. There's a residential area of sorts deep beneath Labo. That's where they confined A. Wait, wasn't A put on trial? Why would Rokumei City shelter A after all she did? It's obvious. It was so that they could keep on using A as a lab rat after she'd caused that huge incident. What? The Rokumei City government and the PRC would be forced to take responsibility were the truth behind the incident to ever come to light. So the people behind Rokumei City figured they should cover the whole incident up and continue the research in another location. Thus, Communicator A came to be known as Subject A from that day onwards and participated in Labo's BC ability research and development. Meanwhile, with the PRC having served its purpose, it was turned into a mere dummy facility. The results of the BC research secretly conducted at Labo were published through the PRC. That way no one would suspect Labo was a BC research centre, and thus, their perfect cover-up system was complete. Both Labo and the PRC are government-managed facilities. Trace them back to their source, and you'll find that they're closely connected, just under the jurisdiction of Rokumei City. Watase thought things over as calmly as possible, despite the agitation causing his insides to tremble. He wanted to make sure there weren't any inconsistencies in what the man was saying. No, hold on. Is that really all there is to it? When you think about it normally, wouldn't someone on the whole thing have tried to stop the whole chain of events? They didn't. You see, back then Rokumei City was all about focusing their efforts into BC research. I think you remember this too, but Japan was showing signs of being in economic and industrial deadlock back in those days. And the new technology known as BC showed up right there and then. The guys behind Rokumei City bet on that possibility and pressed forward with their BC technological development, even if it meant pushing every obstacle in their way aside. What do they have to gain from that? All of their advanced technology has the potential to earn them riches beyond your wildest dreams. BC is genuinely new technology that no one else in the world has invested in. If Japan beat the rest of the world to the punch in its research, that'd put them in the top of that field. The fact is that telepathy can be applied to the field of psychiatry. While empathy has nearly countless potential uses, it could be used for secret intelligence gathering in all sorts of fields like industry, politics, and the military. Thus, those involved built a system based on their new interests and grew obsessed with doing whatever it took to protect those interests, even if it meant covering up anything inconvenient for them. And you're yet another victim of those efforts. I am? 118 people died in the great Rokumei city arson. The bereaved families of the victims were given courteous patronage and granted assistance with their lives, moving on to college and finding jobs. There are many others like you who were given homes and public housing and became civil servants. But didn't you find that strange? Why would a simple local government go so far as to taking the bereaved families of the victims into consideration? Their goal was to take the bereaved families under the city's wing and keep a close eye on how they develop from there. That can't be. Having trouble believing it? Well, I don't blame you. Then I'll send you some documents we've obtained. Take a look at them and decide for yourself if what I'm saying is true. An email with an attachment was sent to the PDA right after the man said that. Watase opened the email and checked the contents of the file. There were various documents that supported the man's claims. A photo of Labo's interior. It showed Labo was no nuclear power research centre. A photo of an email sent from Labo to the PRC. This email provided that a BC insulator that Labo had developed was publicly announced as something from the PRC. Subject A's data. A lot of the data in this one had been deleted, but what remained did confirm that Labo had indeed confined a communicator called that. All sorts of other documents were there, each one supporting the idea that what the man had said was true. So when he finished reading all of it, Watase muttered in a stunned voice, "Is what you're telling me really true?" It is. So it must not be easy to believe, nor is it something you would want to believe. But think back on how abnormal this city is. They control information and conduct surveillance on their townspeople without batting an eye, right? Anything's possible in this city, no matter how unbelievable it may sound. Watase was taken aback at those words. The city had grown to do all sorts of things that would normally be considered a violation of human rights on the supposed grounds that Rokumei City was a government-designated top-secret city, such as setting up surveillance cameras all over the city. The city gates had controlled the coming and going of townspeople, the citizens' database that only certain people were allowed to access. The townspeople had been oppressed by the creation of every single one of them. But their complaints eventually died down and the security cameras and so on were implemented little by little, and before they knew it, all those things had become like air to the townspeople. No, the townspeople had simply gotten used to those abnormalities. Watase felt chills run through him when it hit him just how strange the whole thing was. Since it wasn't directly related to them, no one had thought about it seriously, and thus all sorts of things that couldn't be undone had gone forward without him even noticing. So what are you saying? My family died because of that monster built up by Rokumei City government and the PRC? Yet at the same time the Rokumei City government hid their crimes and never took responsibility? And I received money from that very same government and lived a comfortable life up until today without knowing a damn thing? Unfortunately, that's exactly it. You were raised by the government, responsible for your family's deaths, and been working for them as a civil servant. Watase let out a wordless scream. His blood boiled and a deep red filled his vision. Fuck that! What happened to Subject A? Is she still living in Labo? No, she died. What? After causing that incident, A was used by Labo as a test subject and then died there, just a year after she'd been confined. She probably died a cruel death. In the end, A too was nothing more than a victim of Rokumei City's wrongdoings. A sense of emptiness filled Watase's body. Having immediately lost the target of his hatred, he switched it over to a new one. What happened with the Rokumei City government after that? What happened with Labo after they lost their valuable test subject due to A's death? They abducted new test subjects and used them to continue their BC research. A floral scent filled the air yet again at that moment. Out of all the communicators who lived in Rokumei City, those who possessed particularly superb abilities are confined in Labo and made into test subjects. And so more monsters like A have been growing in number one by one. Why would they ever do something like that? One of their goals is naturally to study BC, and the other one is to create a kind of biological weapon. Did you say a biological weapon? The incident with A was merely an accident, but if you look at it from another angle, you'll find that communicators who have become monsters can be used in interesting ways. For example, let's say you send one of them into the capital of an enemy nation. What do you think would happen next? They'd amplify the malice of the city's residents, leading to mass chaos and destruction. Precisely, they could intentionally cause the same thing that happened in Rokumei City 15 years ago. Now, if left alone for a few days, arson and crime would spread through the whole city, criminals would run rampant, and public order would likely become impossible to restore. But the attack party wouldn't even realize that they've been attacked. For the core concept behind this biological weapon is that it devastates people's minds. A weapon that only damages a country's citizens without actually damaging the country itself. Truly a weapon of the new era. But isn't Rokumei City just a local government? What would drive them to do that? The truth is, the Rokumei City government has this intimate relationship with a certain foreign company. On the outside, they're just a pharmaceutical company. But behind the facade, they're an arms dealer. Merchants of death, as the term goes. Almost all of the sinister research being carried out is done at their request. But no one's realized this, so there's no one we can talk to about or leak this. The truth will forever continue to be covered up and vanish into the deepest depths. I see. So Rokumei City is trying to create more of these monsters responsible for Wataru and our parents' deaths. Flames of rage burned up within Watase. He sealed those pitch black flames deep within his chest and continued, "Hey, let me ask you something. What do you gain from telling me all this? What do you want me to do? Let me reverse the question, what do you want to do?" Watase Kasasagi, I ask this straight to your heart. Now that you know the truth, can you return to that false peace? Tell me your true feelings. Watase's heart pounded loudly at that request. Can I keep on living the same carefree life now that I know the truth? The Rokumei City government had killed his sister and parents, twisted his life, and on top of all that, they'd hidden the truth and forced him into living an unknown life for 15 years. Then why did he focus his hatred on just BC users and not, like, the government as a whole? It just seems like misplaced anger to me. Like, he's got a right to be angry, but fuck, you gotta figure out where you need to aim that anger, man. Watase had pushed his hatred of the culprit of the incident into the deepest corners of his heart by following his sister's dream. But the truth was, there was a certain desire he'd secretly held all these years. I wanted to make the culprit go through the same pain Wataru did. Ah yes, Wataru was your sister, correct? Yeah. She was such a good person. She was weak but motivated, stupid but gentle. Tears poured out of Watase's eyes when he said that. Watase loved Wataru. He hated the one who had taken her away from him forever, from the bottom of his heart. But everything about the culprit, including her very existence, had been concealed by the Rokumei City government. If possible, we would have liked very much to tear A limb from limb, but that was no longer an option. Then that left the Rokumei City government as the only target for Watase's hatred and anger. Hey, should I feel ashamed about wanting revenge? Is it okay for me to want revenge when it's my job to save lives? Is it okay for me to hate the bastards running Rokumei City? Of course. The man's answer was clear and blunt. It's only human for you to hate your family's killer. And if you truly feel that way, then you can become one of us, our comrade. Watase heard footsteps coming from behind at that moment. Watase turned around in surprise. Ukito, I fucking knew it. I didn't see a man standing there. Judging from the fact that he was holding a PDA, he had likely been the one talking to Watase just now. Who are you? Me? I'm a researcher at Labo. The man put his PDA away and answered. But I too hate Labo and Rokumei City much like you. What? A whistleblower. That term passed through Watase's head. He sent him pictures of Labo and data about test subjects just minutes ago. Only someone on the inside could have obtained those things. But what do you mean by become one of us? No, wait, what do you mean by us? You see, while I work as a researcher for Labo, I'm also a member of a certain organization. What organization? The extremist organization who was arrested for the Great Arson 15 years ago. What kind of organization would call themselves an extremist organization? No one refers to themselves as an extremist. Because that means you know you're in the wrong. The ones who were branded as criminals instead of communicator A. Watase was astonished. Wait, do you mean you guys are terrorists? Terrorists, huh? It's true that those who stand up against authority have been frequently called by that term. Quit mincing words. What you guys do is commit acts of destruction, plain and simple. You're the ones who set up the bombs at the PRC before, weren't you? All you've done is give us much more work to do. Hold on, it's not like I'm a member of this extremist organization because I want to be. There's just no other organization out there I can count on to oppose the Rokumei City. That's all there is to it. What? But can't you just tell the police to... Won't work. Considering the fact they've been able to keep such a large-scale cover-up running for so long, it's best to assume Rokumei City has the police in their pocket. And when you look at how much information control is going on, that leaves the media out of the picture too. And before you suggest standing up to them by myself, that's out of the question too. Someone tried that once and they got murdered in a way that looked like an accident. But despite all that, I want to reveal the truth. I want to bring Labo's wrongdoings to light, even if it means making an enemy of the entire city. Why? Why are you going so far? Much like you, I also have a reason to fight. You should understand by now why I told you all this. My comrades and I are currently formulating a plan to deal a crippling blow to Rokumei City in Labo. And we need your help to carry out this plan. You need me? You're free to refuse, of course. If you then proceed to go to the police and tell them everything you've just heard, I'll most likely be arrested as a terrorist. Though perhaps Labo will get to me before the police can and kill me. I'm taking a huge risk by showing my face and telling you all about my background. But I'd like to believe that you'll become one of our comrades. I want to believe that all the things you said about your deceased sister just minutes ago were true. The man looked Watase dead in the eye. You can still turn back now. You can forget everything and return to your normal life. But if you want to fight the Rokumei City alongside us, then become one of us. Watase looked the man back in the eye. After a long silence, he finally answered, "What's the name of your organization?" "Q. We are the ones who pose the unrelenting questions to this insidious world." Natsuhiko was shocked about the memory he'd just seen. But we're going to have to leave that shock until next time because we're out of time for today. Very much. Another long episode. But that sure as shit shed a light on quite a lot right there. So yeah. I still need to know what Subject A's connection to Sally was. Is Sally a clone of A? Her daughter? I guess we'll find out. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for getting out to me, and I'll see you in the next one.